This next article from the New York Post: China expanded Uyghur internment camps despite denials, researchers say. The Chinese government, or the Chinese Nazi Party, as I like to call them, because they have all these Uyghur Muslims in concentration camps. Vast majority of people in China are impoverished. They live out in the country. They have a huge, gigantic, steep social hierarchy that goes between the country people and the city people. There's people living high off the hog in the cities, and they have so many people that they can't share with everyone there in China. So they make up for it by making most of the people in the countryside impoverished, while the Chinese Nazi Party lives high off the hog. It's a surveillance state. They have very, very strict control over that entire country. Everybody's being monitored. It's a authoritarian dictatorship where people disappear all the time, where you're not allowed to talk about politics. Well, I think you can, but they'll probably end up throwing you in jail in a re-education camp. And then this is why they're the Chinese Nazi Party. They're trying to be the world's number one superpower. And so when you take all the fact that they allow private property ownership, all of those things add up to National Socialism. The number one difference in between National Socialism and communism, because people think that like Nazism is inherently anti-Semitic. It's not actually true. No, National Socialism is a system of government that the Nazis were into anti-Semitism, but the system of government is basically, it's socialism where you can own private property, where there's a steep social hierarchy, where they don't share equally with everyone, and it's a meritocracy. That is National Socialism. That's what it is. I'm a computer scientist, so I look at things from the actual qualities of them and the hierarchical configurations of the components, because I'm a UML geek. I love UML. I think it's great. In fact, if I could program in UML, I would actually do it, but you can't actually program in UML. I've actually tried this, and I thought that I could just pull it off, but as it turns out, it's only so useful for making really quick drawings. But that still makes it awesome. I like really quick drawings. I just don't like having to edit useless documents. I'm sorry, I'm on a tangent about UML. What am I doing right now? We're talking about UML. Okay. I'm a fucking nerd. Okay, so we're talking about the Chinese Nazi Party, and they've got these Uyghur Muslim internment camps, and they've got the steep social hierarchy with the hundreds of millions of impoverished Chinese out in the countryside, with people living high off the hog in the city because they don't have enough resources to share with everybody. So the only way they can do it is with this steep social hierarchy in the authoritarian dictatorship. So this is why China is far right. It's not communist. It's insane to think that China is communist. First, they allow private property ownership. That's mutually exclusive of communism. Communism does not facilitate private property ownership. Private property ownership is not able to be done in communism, because communism, by the root definition of it, means community control. That means the community owns everything. That means that the community owns the government. That's why communism in its purest form sounds great. And I'm going to argue that their innovation was almost good enough. Their capitalization was critically injured. They weren't able to move the markets fast enough, but they were able to innovate. It's very clear that the economic system isn't the thing that prevents the humans from innovating. The economic system prevents people from selling their products so they can innovate at a competitive rate. This is why communism is a big time fail. Other than that's the economic reason why it's a big time fail. The other reason why it's a big time fail is because it requires people to enforce it. People don't just want to give away the fruits of their labor without getting anything in exchange. That's called theft or slavery, which is theft. So in order to make communism work, you have to have a far-right dictatorship in order to force people to part with their hard-worked labor and their hard-earned money. They want something in exchange. And in communism, you just typically have to kill people to get people to force them to do whatever you want, in which case that's a very high motivator to get them to do whatever you want, which is what I'm talking about with the it wasn't the innovation that caused them to fail. The innovation was there. It was the system, the economic system fundamentally is flawed. It doesn't work when everybody is on the same level. You have to have a social hierarchy because humans have always worked with social hierarchies. We always seek to move up the hierarchy to the next stage, to the next level, to become more wealthy, more educated, more experienced. These are all things that we seek to do. So when you take away these things, what you end up with is you'll have a small group of people that will bias everything towards their in-group. They will become the state, and it will become a dictatorship. It will not be far left. It will be far right, because that's the difference between the two. Most people have no idea what the difference between the two things are. So researchers at Australian's Strategic Policy Institute, a think tank that is also US-backed, unveiled the findings at the Xinjiang Data Project on Thursday, which showed that at least 61 detention centers were expanded since July 2019. Both at that time and now, Chinese government officials have claimed that they were winding down their mass internment practices. A SPI investigation, which took place over 2 years, tells the different story, identifying 380 detention centers. The number was over 100, more than was previously known. About 14 of these camps were still under construction this year, despite government officials saying that all detainees had graduated and thus returned to society. The report stated that only 8 camps showed signs that they were being shut down. Xinjiang is a province in the quote-unquote communist country where an estimated 1 million Uighur Muslims and other Muslim minorities have been detained since 2018. So you have to ask yourself the question, if it is communism and it's supposed to be community control, why the hell don't the Uighur Muslims also too have community control over the government and over their religion? That's because it's not community control. It's state controlled. State controlled is by definition far right. Because in order to have it state controlled, you have to have a steep social hierarchy where the state has enough power to actually control everything. So communism in its purest form, you have four-tier hierarchy, where at the bottom there's the farmers, above them is artisans, above them are soldiers, and above them is the military. But it's not supposed to be a situation where it's impossible to overthrow the government because they believe in Marxism. A tenet of Marxism is dialectic materialism. This is the class struggle between the poor and the bourgeoisie, middle class, the entitled group of people that doesn't deserve what they earned or created. I think the whole concept of the bourgeoisie is fundamentally flawed to its core. It's a bullshit theory. A lot of people, I even fell victim to it in my college years. Because they tell you, oh, these bourgeoisie, it's just this group of entitled people that they got everything given to them and they didn't earn it or they didn't deserve to have it. We should share with everyone else. You're like, all right, yeah, sure. Yeah, I don't like those people either. Yeah. Only it was just bullshit the entire time. There's some people out there that are pretty douchey, but you're kind of being a white knight there. You're saying, no, I'm the one that has, that is entitled to this, even though I didn't earn it. It is me. I'm the white knight. I am the one that is more deserving than him. You should be with me, damsel. I will save you from the imaginary misogynistic pig boogeyman. And so this is the same thing with the bourgeoisie. It's like you're like, all right, so why exactly are you more entitled? Why is it like going to be more fair if you're just given this by just splitting it up? Like, oh, because it would be more fair that way. Like, okay, so what happens when you split it up evenly and then other people had more that they weren't telling you about and then they ended up with more and then their group of people then took over because they had stuff they weren't telling you and then they just kept taking more and more? Oh, right. Yeah. There's a lot of little things about communism like that just don't add up. You can't just split things equally and then snap your fingers and then magically everything's better. The only thing you can really do is make your society free and open and make it so that people have class mobility and that you can work your way up. Because to be quite honest, I don't want the home bum who fucked up everything in his life, who's got a drinking problem. I don't want him to have as much as me because he's just going to waste it. I actually want to have more than home bum who's drunk as piss down by the Dairy Mart right now. Thank you very much. In fact, I want to have a lot more than that person. That person has a drug and alcohol problem. I do not have a drug and alcohol problem. So therefore, that person would just waste all of that stuff. They didn't earn it. They're not going to respect it. They're probably going to cry rivers full of lip tears whenever the money dries up and then blame you for why they had a drug problem. It's because of the bourgeoisie holding me down. So let's see. Xinjiang is a province in. These ethnic minorities are held in internment camps and prisons where they're subjugated to ideological discipline, forced to denounce their religion and language, and physically abused. Chinese Nazi Party officials, however, have long suspected Uyghurs of harboring separatist tendencies because they have their own culture, language, and religion. Yeah, that's exactly why. The most ironic thing about this is that the Chinese have been putting out a propaganda campaign to try to prevent the United States from enforcing our immigration laws. They say it's the racist white man that is oppressing the Latinos by kicking out the illegal immigrants, which is total batshit nonsense. And then they're sitting up here with, they got millions of these Uyghur Muslims in concentration camps because they don't want Islam to take over China. And it just kind of points out the hypocrisy. It's like It also points out their cyber warfare operation. Actually, China is engaging in a cyber warfare operation against the United States. They have been doing it for a while. In this cyber warfare operation, they use psychological warfare. What they do is they change what words are acceptable, what they mean, and in what context they're appropriate in. Once you are able to do this, you can then start manipulating people by changing these words in order to provoke class conflict, to create cultural Marxism, which is a detestable philosophy where they said Marxism didn't fail because of the flat social hierarchy. No, it's the culture that failed. It's the racist people that wouldn't share, and it's the capitalist who is making too much money off of that highly productive farm. We have to take that from him and share it with the people. So they don't want the Uighur Muslims taking over because they're what they did in the Chinese cultural cultural de-evolution, when the Chinese quote unquote Communist Party went through and started mass slaughter at about 60 million people out in the countryside, and they took mobs of people from the cities, and they went through and they destroyed all the temples and cultural institutions. And this is why socialism in the big city is a really deadly threat to you and your family and your business and your well-being, is because when you have large pockets of socialists that develop, you now have the possibility for armies full of socialist drones from the big cities to go through and commit atrocities to control the countryside. Now, admittedly, we do have the internet. People aren't bloodthirsty savages like they used to be. So, is that threat overblown? Antifa and BLM, or as I like to say, BLM Antifa Nazis or Blamen, they have been burning down our cities. They are Marxist. They are from the big cities. Most Democrats live in big cities. Almost all BLM Antifa Nazis are Democrats. And a large percentage of them are on food stamps in the big cities, the Democratic-run shitholes. And they have been burning down our cities, and they have been engaging in cultural Marxism. And this is all related to the immigration policy, where they're saying that the racist white males, they're oppressing the minorities. They're saying that the quote unquote racist Republicans from them poor rural states are oppressing the minorities and the women in the Democratic-run big city shitholes. And so that's why they need to burn down our cities, because the police are enforcing the laws, and then every once in a while somebody dies. But they don't want you to do anything about the 20,000 murders in the U.S. per year. About half of them are committed by black people. There's about 6 times as many white people as black people in the U.S. And so if you look at the statistics, there's about 10,000 murders by black people per year. And there's about 800 police killings per year. About 9 of them are of unarmed black men. So the ratio of kills are, for each unarmed black person that's killed, there's about 1,111 people that are murdered by black people. That's what you call the elephant in the room. And so they don't want you to talk about that, because that would actually fix the problem. So what does this have to do with it? What they're doing is that they've been programmed to be cultural Marxist drones. because they've been institutionalizing anti-racism through the business, the workplaces, Chinese Nazi Party controlled businesses, as well as the ivory tower, which is a metaphor for the racist power structure that the Democrats have come up with. Democrats were the party that owned slaves, started the KKK. They opposed women's suffrage. They were the bigots. And they created a racist power structure. And they're in the big cities. Most Democrats are in big cities. And where most of the minorities live. And the people at the top control all the people down at the bottom. Since they're almost all run by Democrats, of course, Democrats are behind the scenes in almost all of these ivory towers. Of course, there's going to be some Republicans there because they're just trying to make money off the business. But these businesses have been predominantly radicalized. They believe in this critical race theory bullshit where they say the white man has been oppressing the minorities. They took the land from the American Indians who were nomads, didn't have a government. Apparently you can take land from nomads. I didn't know that you could take land from nomads, but apparently you can in batshit crazy land. And they say the American Indians were the ones who were supposed to have rights over this country, that we took it from the Amerindians. But they don't tell you what tribe was supposed to control it. Was it the Dakota? Or was it the Sioux? Or was it the Apache? What about the Aztecs? Was it any of the tribes that owned slaves and committed genocide? Because, American Indians actually owned slaves. They even owned black slaves. People didn't know this. It's actually true. Look it up. American Indians were slave owners. And then they try to say, oh, no, we're perfect. It's just the white man. It's just him. It's Kale oppressing all of them minorities up from top his ivory tower. It's me. I'm the one. Because I'm the privileged white male that won't share my white privilege with all the minorities in the cities that I don't live in. Yeah. I'm the one that's oppressing all of the minorities. It's me. As we can see, this is a bunch of rubbish nonsense. That's critical race theory, is where they basically, it's a scapegoat where they're saying it's just a white man holding us down. He's the reason why I had a shit attitude towards education when I was young, kept back talking to teachers and kept getting suspended. It's the white man that doesn't live in the city. It doesn't have anything to do with the fact that I don't have a father in my house and that my mom's single and fucking a bunch of really sketchy dudes who are selling drugs who'd never helped me out with my homework. No. Can never be that because it's the white man who's doing it. And that's because they live in mostly black neighborhoods where there's hardly any white people. So when you blame the white man's just not there. So you can just make up whatever you want and get as pissed as you want because the scapegoat never shows up because they're not there. So obviously this critical race thing is bullshit. Critical race theory is bullshit. And then you got the doctrine of diversity, where they're saying all white teams are inferior to teams with black people on it and women, because they did some studies that showed that diverse teams are more productive and innovative. So the white feminists, they generalize this because all they see is race and skin color. So they think that this means that all white teams are inferior. But in reality, it means that teams from different cities and states and countries are more innovative and productive. But it has nothing to do with your skin color. Your skin, this is just like a pigment in your skin. It doesn't really indicate too much of anything about your personality. But they want to say that black people who don't side with Democrats are skin folk and not kinfolk because they are trying to control your vote. And so what this is causing is that cultural Marxism, got to go back to China, got to got to explain the background of this. So the cultural Marxism is where they're trying to destroy all of our culture because they think the white man is racist, and that they have to get rid of the white males and replace them with minorities and women, because these theories are mainly in big cities where there's not a lot, or where the people at the top of the ivory tower, typically white, or they're immigrants, and cat. And so it's a nice, convenient scapegoat to say, no, it's not the white people at the top of the ivory tower in the city where you live. No, it's the racist white Republicans out in the poor rural states. That's the reason why the minorities in the big cities who have bad attitudes towards education, who get suspended from school all the time, that's the reason why they're stuck at the bottom of the social hierarchy. Has nothing to do with the fact that their father's not in the house. Oh, I gotta get rid of the cat. The cat sat on the green screen and he had some poop on his butt and he just wiped poop on the green screen. Oh, he's such a cute cat. Sorry, I digress. So what about this? So the Chinese people have been programming our people with cultural Marxism in a cyber warfare campaign. And so they've been using Wikipedia, social media, Chinese Nazi party controlled companies to basically, what they're trying to do is they want to wipe out the racist white man's culture because they're oppressing the minorities. And so they want to make it so we can't enforce our immigration laws, so that they flood us with immigrants. And when you look at the data, this is the map of U.S. population projections, 1900 to 2016, or sorry, census population, U.S. population, 1900 to 2016. Population projections, 2017 to 2060 by immigration scenarios. Let me zoom in. We could see that the projected populations with no immigration in 2060 are going to be 319.7 million people. The low immigration scenario is going to be 376.2 million people. And then the high immigration scenario is 446.9 million people. So the difference between the Republicans want the low immigration or the immigration restriction scenario. The Democrats want the high immigration scenario, and then in between you have the balance, the status quo. Although the immigration rates have gone down because of Donald Trump, that's not necessarily going to be a permanent thing, especially if Joe Magoo Biden gets in office. So what you can see from this is without any immigration, our population goes down because our birth rate is below the replacement rate. The low immigration scenario that the Republicans are proposing as the max, this is going to prevent them from packing in 70 million people. 70 million extra immigrants. let's put that into perspective. So, we're currently at 330 million, right? So 70 million extra people divided by 330, that's 21% of our current population extra. 21% of our population extra. That's a lot of people. What cities are these people going to? 70 million people? I'm going to be alive in 2060. Do I have to put up with all 70 million of these people in my life? Yeah. The Democrats want to pack these people in for one reason and one reason only, besides the fact that they're completely fucking corrupt. We already gone over this in one time in this show, although it's such a long show. I guess we got to go over it twice. I made this graph. This is my graph. It's the Democrat 4-tier racial caste hierarchy. This is how fucked up Democrats are. You can see here, over here in the right, the demographics of the voters in the 2016 election. You can see 91% of them were black, or 91% of black people voted for Hillary, along with 66% of Hispanic voters. And then down here, we can see that here's the height map of the U.S. population. Or, the number of voters that voted for Democrats versus Republicans shown as a height map. In the 2016 election over here. And so here you can see, here's where most of these people voting for Democrats are. Areas with a lot of black people in them. So we can see the largest one is the insanely corrupt state of California. This is the Southern California area right here. How does that work out? Is that San Francisco? And so there's Seattle. Here's Portland. Northern California. It looks like San Francisco right there, and then like LA or something. Chicago. Orlando, right? Jacksonville. I don't know what that one is. So what this translates into is this is the voting demographic. This is how fucked up Democrats are. What does this have to do about the story? I have to stay on story. We're talking about the Uighur internment camps and then how fucked up Democrats are. So they have this social hierarchy. This is why they want to pack in the immigrants, is because 2/3 of them vote for Democrats. This thing. If 2/3 of them voted for Republicans, they would want to kick them out. But since 2/3 of them are voting for Democrats and they think that white people are racist, then that justifies their critical race theory, their doctrine of diversity, where they have to remove the white males from the workplace. What does this have to do about this? So this is what China's doing. China's behind this. This is China. China's cyber warfare operation. This is what they're doing. They're trying to trick us into not enforcing our immigration policies by rigging Wikipedia, promoting anti-racism, and stoking the Black Lives Matter, Antifa, Nazi race riots, making them flaming hot so that you can bring out as many far right and as many far left as you can. And so, why am I going on the tangent about this? These Uighur Muslims are emblematic of how fucked up the Chinese government are, because The Chinese government are trying to prevent us from enforcing our immigration policies because their goal is to remove the white English speakers, replace them with socialist Latinos, because most Latinos are socialist. So when you pack in a whole bunch of immigrants from outside of the country, you end up with a shit ton of commies, bro. Like straight up communist. And they bring with them cultural Marxism. Not only are they supporters of cultural Marxism, they also are supporters of changing our language to their language, Spanish. That, when you change the language, you change the culture. If the people you're bringing in are socialist Latinos and you're changing the language to Spanish, that's cultural Marxism. That's what the Chinese are doing while they're sitting here with millions of Uighur Muslims in concentration camps. So that's just fucked up. That's just hella fucked up. So we got to take out the Chinese Nazi Party, take out Zinni the Pooh. Is there anything else in this article that I need to read? Earlier this month, more than 300 organizers published an open letter to the United Nations demanding it address rampant human rights abuses by the Chinese Nazi Party. People need to start calling them Nazi Party. You cannot be communist and allow private property ownership. The two things are mutually exclusive. No, they're like, oh, no. Xi Jinping has a new kind of Marxism. This new kind of Marxism is a improvement on socialism, where they allow private property. Only that's what National Socialism is, buddy. Like, oh no, but we don't practice ethno-nationalist eugenics. Sorry, what does ethno-nationalist eugenics have anything to do with National Socialism? It doesn't. No. Okay, the fact that Nazis were supporters of institutionalized eugenics and they were racist against mixed races, not against... This is a misconception of Nazis, is that they were racist against black people. This is not true. They did not put Africans in the concentration camps. In fact, Adolf Hitler is in his last political, what is it called? The last letters that he wrote before he committed suicide, he said very specifically something to the effect that he never thought the Chinese were inferior. He thought, in fact, actually their history was actually superior to that of Germany. But that when he was saying be prideful of your race, he's just saying that like they're selling. Well, I'm paraphrasing. They're saying it's like you're a soap salesman. Everybody else is. You're not supposed to say my soap is only so good. It's not as good as the other guys. You know, it's just kind of average. That's not how you sell soap. Germans weren't slave owners. They weren't the colonizers who went and like Britain colonized the world. They were against slavery and they weren't racist, but they believed in this weird eugenics theory that mixed races were inferior, which I think is detestable. I think that that's more vile than racism itself. I do think that it's the most fucked up kind of racism out there, but I think it's on such another level. I don't think it's called racism because they weren't racist against... It was intra-racial violence as opposed to interracial violence between races. Violence between races is like violence by white people against black people. Nazism was intra-racial violence. It was almost all the victims were white. And they thought that because they were just trying to take over the world and they're just throwing anybody under the bus. But what am I talking about? So they say, no, this isn't National Socialism because we don't practice eugenics. Like, no, man. No, National Socialism has a very, very, very fixed definition. It's it's socialism where you allow private property ownership. It's a extreme steep social hierarchy where it's a meritocracy as opposed to you being gifted things by your family. You would compete for the top slot. So in which case the Chinese, they have these second generation rich kids, like the children of the Chinese Nazi Party are living high on the hog. And that's not Nazism. Technically, Nazism would be where they have to compete for all the resources. They have to continually compete. But I mean, not really. I mean, really, the difference is that you can own private property. There's a steep social hierarchy. You don't share equally. You have a competition for the top slot in the social hierarchy because it's a meritocracy. That's the difference in between the two things. And that is exactly what China is, with the exception of the second generation rich that everything's given to them by their family. But they still have a steep social hierarchy where they do compete for the top slot. They do. There's just some rich kids too mixed in there, which I don't think justifies that. They're still National Socialists. So let's say I'm beating the story to death. I think I've said enough. Here's images of the Uyghur internment camps near Kashgar in Xinjiang. So